We now recognize the chairman of the Committee on National Defense and the subcommittee chairman also of the Committee on Finance, Senator Ping Lacson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to express my thanks to the distinguished sponsor, Chairman of the Finance Committee, for accommodating us to interpolate on the general principles.
Most willing, Your Honor, Mr. President. Thank
Mr. President, now that the President has sounded the clarion call, and even as he spoke very strongly against corruption in government, don't you think that the Senate, through your leadership as well as that of the Senate President, should heed the call and play a more active role by way of the proposed 2021 national budget?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah. I believe there couldn't be a better illustration of how acts of corruption are committed than by the misuse and abuse of public funds. Not anymore by the hundreds of thousands, but by the millions of pesos wasted during the implementation of the national budget or the General Appropriations Act. That said, I'd like to take advantage of the presence of the members of the DBCC, hoping that we can make adjustments in the policy direction of the 2021 budget to genuinely conform with what they have aptly described or articulated in three simple words: reset, rebound, and recover, in order to adapt to the new normal brought about by the current public health crisis. In fact, in his budget message, President Duterte emphasized that the 2021 budget mentioned the three tenets, including resetting our policies or rethinking the way we govern under this new phenomenon, rebounding through infrastructure development, and recovering by helping our people in adapting to post-pandemic life. I'm sure the President was not referring to the infrastructure projects that I'm about to show you or flash on the screen when he mentioned the pursuit or pursuing the rebound tenet in his budget message. Thus, the proposed 2021 appropriations bill should be scrutinized against the budget philosophies of reset, rebound, and recover. Before I present some illustrative samples of how public funds are wasted through some infrastructure projects, I would like to show you the historical data on the appropriations for the program Buildings and Structures, Multipurpose Facilities in two categories. One, various infrastructures, including local projects or VILP, and two, local infrastructure program, LIP. Now, this is one item in the annual GAA that can take a backseat in 2021. And I'd like to illustrate why, Mr. President. First, during our session break, Mr. President, I sent out a team to check and verify randomly some of the 5,913 so-called rehashed projects worth 135 billion pesos that were already or are already funded under the 2020 GAA to find out how these projects would look like if 10% or 40% of their 2020 appropriations were, quote-unquote, borrowed by the DBM to be utilized for the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, number one, Mr. President, this is a multipurpose building in Barangay Sapilang, Bacnotan, La Union. Now, in 2017, GAA, page 1040, napondo na po ito ng 5,600,000 pesos. Again, in 2019, page 678, another 5 million pesos was appropriated. In 2020, page 523, another 5 million. Now, pray tell, Mr. President, does this structure, a 400 square meter structure, look like it's worth 15.6 million to you? And shall we allow to allocate another 5 million pesos for this project in 2021? I think the picture will answer your question, Mr. President. Now, we asked our resident engineer, no, Mr. President, ang cost ng construction niya ng multipurpose building per square meter nasa 30,000 pesos, 25,000 to 30,000 pesos. This is a 400 square meter structure. Kung kukwentahin natin at 25,000, dapat tapos na ito sa 10 million. But as I mentioned, nakagastos na ng 15.6 million, ayan pa yung itsura. It's a skeleton structure, Mr. President, as we speak. Another, napunduhan ito sa 2019, next slide, ng 2 million pesos. Humihingi uli sa 2021 ng 3 million pesos. Ayan po yung itsura. Pupunduhan ba natin ito ng 3 million pesos? Next. In 2019, next slide. Ito. 2 million pesos. Humihingi ng another 3 million pesos. The same question. Are we going to allow that this will be funded in the 2021 budget? Another one. A total of 21 million pesos. Under the 2017 GAA, 8,400,000 pesos. Under the 2018 GAA, 12,600,000 pesos. Ayan po yung itsura. Ayoko sirain yung araw nyo, distinguished sponsor, but I have to show this because I'm trying to drive home a point later. Another one, next. Nakalagay dito, completion, construction completion. Humihingi siya ng dalawang items ang hinihingi, isang 3 million, isang 5 million. So total of 8 million pesos. Next. Under the 2019 GAA, page 677, nagkaroon na ito ng 10 million pesos. 2020, another 5 million. Under the 2021 General Appropriations Bill, humingi siya ng 2 items pa, dalawang 10 million. But, you know, this structure was funded by the local government unit, not from the GAA. So, nasaan napunta yung 10 million in 2019 and 5 million in 2020? Next. Humihingi ng 3 million pesos sa 2021 GAA. Yung gagawing structure dito, multipurpose building, again, may nakatayo pang bahay. Dapat i-demolish muna. And yet, ang sinasabi rito, ginagamit na term sa item is completion. Anong i-complete dito? Now, anyway, Mr. President, these are observations. And I'm sure, had my team had the time and opportunity to travel to other parts of the country, ang pinag-uusapan natin dito, 5,913 infrastructure projects na worth 135 billion pesos. Now, during the DBCC committee hearing, the distinguished sponsor not argued, no, explained that some of these multipurpose buildings are being used as evacuation centers or quarantine facilities. Now, my rebuttal is, there's a separate item, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, of 3.7 billion pesos in the 2020 GAA and another proposed appropriation of 2.7 billion. Maybe if we will, at the proper time, if you will agree or our colleagues will agree that we just delete the proposed appropriations of 68 billion pesos for such multipurpose buildings. Yung iba siguro pwede nating dito realign. Dagdagan natin yung 2.7 billion to be used as evacuation centers or quarantine facilities para mas magamit pa at maging responsive pa doon sa theme ng 2021 GAA. Now, moving on, Mr. President, hindi pa tayo nagtatapos diyan. There are other skeleton projects, road construction. In 2017, while we were deliberating on the 2018 GAA, or national budget, I questioned this particular project. Why? Because the right-of-way issues have not been resolved. And it was my argument at that time that we should first resolve the right-of-way issues before we even fund the construction of roads and bridges. Now, ang nangyari po rito, nagkaroon pa rin ng funding for 2018. In 2018, ang description Eastern Interior Road Section including right-of-way and bridge, Cagayan de Oro City, 200 million pesos. Wala po tayo nakitang bridge. Another item, Eastern Interior Road Section with tunnel, Cagayan de Oro City, 150 million. Wala po tayo nakitang tunnel. Ang total na so far na pumapasok dito sa project, because we talked with the, I think, regional director, si Virgilio Duarte. Ang sabi niya, hindi na naging viable or feasible yung paggawa ng tunnel. So, abandoned. But then again, my question is, gumastos na tayo rito ng 1.791 billion pesos kung isasama natin yung proposed budget under the 2021 GAB na 414.5 billion pesos. Question, mag-appropriate pa ba tayo uli ng 414 billion after spending, sabihin natin 1.3, 1.4 billion pesos for a project that is no longer feasible? Alam nyo, hinaharap dyan, kindly flash yung yan. We expected this project way back in January 2019. Ayan po yung itsura ng January 2019. We went back just last month, October 2020. Now, kindly spot the difference. And between 2015 and 2020, 70 million, 110 million, 150 million, 200 million, 200 million, 150 million, 130 million, all the way down. Please answer this to me, sponsor. Do not be shocked.
Yes, Your Honor. I wasn't sure if you were finished. So, thank you, Mr. President, and I'd like to compliment the good senator, the chair of National Defense and vice chair of this committee, for going beyond, definitely beyond the call of duty, and to his staff also for really outstanding work in inspecting. It's usually the job of COA and DPWH, but for his staff to go the extra mile, I think deserves some recognition, Your Honor. I think what I would do is I would express initially any openness to any amendments the good gentleman, His Honor, would want to make at the proper time, and perhaps maybe we give some of the project proponents or the agencies tasked to handle these projects, to give them a chance to respond. Although some of the pictures really are quite, well, there is an expression in law, res ipsa loquitur, or the thing speaks for itself, Your Honor. So in a way, they are self-explanatory. There doesn't seem to be any change in that photograph in answer to your question, Your Honor. So definitely, I think we can make adjustments and we can be flexible, Your Honor.
Yeah, we flew a drone over that area, Mr. President, over the project. It's facing a dike. So probably yung bridge, tatawid doon sa dike. Pero sabi nung regional director, mukhang hindi rin feasible because ang sabi niya, we will have to fix the dike first. So if it does not reflect poor planning, I don't know what is, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. So,
Mr. President,
thank you
Mr. President,
for
may I
that
just,
manifestation.
I think
Mr.
the
President?
majority leader, Mr. President, the
with
majority
the
leader
permission
wishes
of
to.
Senator Lacson, with the permission of Senator Lacson, Mr. President, I believe that is the bypass road going towards the airport. Because I'm based in Cagayan de Oro now, Mr. President, I've seen that a larger portion of that is already finished. But yes, we cannot go to the airport if this bridge is not completed. Absolutely. So this is, I believe, the bypass road going towards the airport. It will connect towards the highway connecting towards Laguindingan Airport. But with the pictures of Senator Lacson, it's very clear because I've never entered this road. I just see it whenever we pass the bypass road. What we could do, Mr. President, is discuss this with Secretary Mark and ask also the regional director, Ma'am Zanitan, Arditan, to comment why it looks like this after several years, Mr. President. Because I'm interested, of course, I would love to see this project be completed because the traffic in Cagayan de Oro, and I know the distinguished sponsor, Senator Angara, has seen the traffic, experienced it firsthand in his recent trip to Cagayan de Oro. The traffic here is starting to get also very, I'd say, intense, no, very bad traffic situation in Cagayan de Oro. So we welcome this development. It's just that we have to make sure that it's properly implemented. And I join the good Senator Lacson, that we make sure that this project is properly implemented. So yes, maybe in the proper time, Senator Lacson, Mr. President, during the budget of the DPWH, we can ask them about this particular project, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, majority leader. Yes, we confirm the traffic is getting bad.
In case you haven't noticed, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, some notice staff, branded it road to nowhere. Kasi wala talaga pupuntahan, Mr. President. Papuntang bundok, nakaplano yung tunnel, inabandon yung tunnel. Pero napunduhan yung tunnel. Now, anyway,
Yung white elephant na nabanggit ka.
naging white elephant na ginastusan na, kung isasama pa yung hinihingi sa 2021, 1.8 billion pesos. The reason why I'm presenting this is, I'm glad that Secretary Dominguez is here. Hirap na yung Department of Finance na maghanap ng mautangan. And baon na rin tayo sa utang because I think we have hit 4.6 trillion during the pandemic era only. Kasi I think we're gonna hit 14 trillion or 9.6 from initially, I think, if I remember it correctly, last January, nasa 7.6 lang tayo, 7.8. And we're about to hit 12 trillion. May utang ulit tayo kasi kailangan natin ng vaccine. And yet, we see for ourselves how funds are being wasted. And the 2021 proposed national budget should really be redirected to conform with the sign of the times. Kasi if we continue funding these kinds of projects, like what I've shown earlier, yung multipurpose buildings, kaya I will strongly suggest at the proper time that the appropriations for multipurpose buildings not necessarily totally abandoned, but at least in 2021, baka pwedeng alisin na lang muna natin yung 68 billion or most of it, kasi yung dalawa ito yung BILP and LIP. And when we inquired, yung BILP would include also national buildings. And we don't want to touch those, because these are probably offices of the DPWH or national buildings for some national offices. Pero yung mga local projects, nakita naman natin na skeleton yung after spending or appropriating a few million pesos, ganun yung itsura, parang na tayo nagpapaloko. I hope you get my point, Mr. President. Another project, ito yung, I don't know how feasible this is, Gika-Dale Road Network to Bicol International Airport. Fine. Under the 2020 GAA, meron tong appropriations na 10 million pesos. Ito yung inalisan or diniscontinue And then we are now proposing to appropriate 1 million pesos under the GAB 2021. Pinakompute po namin, ako pinakompute ko, no, how much would 1 kilometer of road cost? Kasi iba-iba, bawat region, iba yung cost. In the Bicol region, ang cost niya is 25,000, 25,022,584 pesos and 33 centavos ang isang 2-lane 1 kilometer road. Kung bibigyan natin ng 1 million pesos, itong project na ito, ang magagawa lamang 40 meters. Is it wise to appropriate 1 million pesos just to construct 40-meter linear meter of road for this project? Parang hindi ba? Kasi magmomobilize ng equipment, yung pala 40 meters lang yung magagawa. Okay. Ito. Access road leading to Lidong Seaport, Santo Domingo, Albay. We were told that Lidong Seaport, Santo Domingo, Albay is privately owned. So why would government spend, tapos ginagamit yung seaport sa quarrying daw ng mga Chinese? Kayo na po ang bahalang humusga, Mr. President. I'm done with that portion. I'll proceed to the next topic of discussion, which is the National Broadband Program, which is related to what I just showed earlier. Kasi kung meron tayong masasave o marirealign na pwedeng available for alignment na 6 to 8 billion pesos and more, why can't we appropriate 18 billion pesos for the National Broadband Program of the ICT? Okay. In the recently released 2020 United Nations e-government survey, out of the 193 countries, yung Pilipinas ranked 77 in e-government development index and 57 under e-participation index. Sinabi rin doon sa survey, yung Philippines is a very highly developed human capital progress, pero stalled because of our relatively less developed telecommunications infrastructure. In the Digital Quality of Life Index 2020 by Surfshark Limited, the country ranks 82nd in internet affordability, 77th in internet quality, and 67th in electronic infrastructure. Now, no less than Secretary Carl, NEDA Director General, yung report niya released by the World Bank and the NEDA, sabi nila, the adoption of digital technologies can help the country in overcoming and recovering from the crisis brought about with 18,178,708,000. It's not because Secretary Hunasan is our former colleague. This is for the country. This is not for Secretary Hunasan. With the full investment, because I am sponsoring the budget of the ICT, and during the committee hearing, I asked them, sabi nila, with the full investment of 18,178,708,000 pesos for the National Broadband Program, the government will be able to benefit and save 34.25 billion pesos in the next 5 years after the implementation of the program. Now, tanong ko sa kanya, kung mabigyan kayo ng 18 billion, kaya nyo bang ma-implement yung national broadband o makumpleto? Ang sagot was yes, resounding yes. And yung 34 billion in government savings, hindi pa kasama yung LGUs. Now, dito lang sa Senate, may I ask the Senate President or anybody, magkano binabayaran natin subscription sa Converge? Or individual offices of senators, magkano binabayaran natin bawat office para sa internet connection? Pag sinuma total natin yan sa isang taon, that's a lot of money. And how many, Department of Finance, for example, how much are you paying? BIR, Customs, NEDA, DBM, how much are we paying for subscription? Now, if we realign part of the 68 billion pesos, a big portion of which has already been wasted in the past years, kasi 2016 to 2020, nakaka 168 billion na nga eh. Hindi mo pwedeng mag-invest na lang tayo ng 18 billion pesos para sa National Broadband Program. Pagkatapos tayo ngayon na makikinabang, hindi na tayo magsusubscribe because government will provide. This is not, this is not to say that yung new normal ngayon will use a lot of, internet connection. Yung school learning program, tapos tayo, Zoom tayo ng Zoom. Hindi naman tayo makapag-Webex nang wala tayong internet connection. So I hope the chairman and our colleagues will consider my plea because, hindi lang yun, based on the BSP report, the Bangko Sentral, and Secretary Jokno is here, or Governor Jokno, to either confirm or deny this. Yung e-money providers or those using digital payment streams have reported record high increases in the number of transactions and account users during the quarantine period. The latest data on the volume of transactions using PesoNet and InstaPay shows a substantial growth of 122% from 23 million to 51.2 million from the first to the second quarter of 2020 alone. Now, bakit ayaw natin mag-invest sa technology? Because it's not so tangible. Hindi nakikita yung tulay, hindi nakikita yung kalye, hindi nakikita yung multipurpose building. Intangible eh. But the benefits that we will reap over the next 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, tremendous. I heard, I don't know if I recall the figure mentioned by Secretary Hunasan when he was with the President in their visit to Korea. And according to him, quoting the Korean counterpart, South Korean counterpart, since 1987, naka-e-government na sila. And they're able to save, I think, $25 billion. Why can we not copy an obvious success story?
Yeah, just for the record, to answer part of the question of Senator Lacson, the average for the Senate offices, senators' offices only, and not the secretariat, is 4.6 million a year, just on the internet.
Internet subscription. Wala pa yung secretariat, Mr. President.
Wala pa. Wala pa. In the Webex that we're using in all that.
No.
Wala pa. So we, indeed, the point being raised by Senator Lacson is very important and laudable. Instead of the roads going to nowhere, the digital transformation of government. Do you have already, Secretariat?
And skeletal.
1.9. 2 million. The Secretariat, 2 million a year.
Mr. President, at yung skeletal multipurpose buildings, napuntuhan na, wala naman nagagawa. Now, I have a couple of questions, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. How does our government harness digital financing platforms to aid the downturn of consumer spending during the quarantine?
I think the DTI, Your Honor, has a program where they assist MSMEs to have a digital presence. I'm trying to remember the name of the program, but it's one of the services they provide because a lot of the cottage industries and the MSMEs, Your Honor, they don't have a digital presence, and they make their money when there is a fiesta. For instance, I was reading about these weavers who go to fiestas all over the country, and they don't have a digital presence at all. So during our DTI hearings, I asked Secretary Lopez to ramp up because there is very little, there won't be very many bazaars and things, industries like agencies like CITEM or some of these more traditional bodies which hold conventions, etc., and actual displays of Philippine products, they probably won't be operating as usual. They won't be having their trade fairs. So they need to harness the digital presence. And part of that, I suppose, is not only having a website and where your products and prices are on display, but also having a way of making the payment online, Your Honor. And perhaps the figure cited by the good gentleman or the chair of National Defense are illustrative of how businesses have taken advantage of this, Your Honor. So that's one way, and I'm not sure if the DICT, perhaps they also have some efforts, and in general, at least from the macro point of view, when they roll out the portions of the broadband, and the committee has agrees with the chair agrees with Senator Lacson that we need to invest definitely. That's why one of the biggest augmentations made in the committee report is for the national broadband project. There's 3 billion, although admittedly there is a long way to go, and before completion of the national broadband. But that is something. For instance, if the national, just to use my home province and some of the adjoining provinces as an example, Your Honor, pag natapos po yung Quirino, Aurora, part of Isabela, pag nalagyan ho ng broadband yon, then one of the next step would be to maybe to push some of these cities as the next wave of digital cities for ICT and BPO sector, Your Honor. Meron silang second wave, pero I'm sure down the line they're going to have a third wave, fourth wave, and but at least it's something to aim for to generate rural employment, Your Honor.
Saka yung submarine cable, yung sa Aurora dadaan yun eh.
Which one po?
Submarine cable.
That's
Sa
right.
Facebook.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And are digital payment streams already available for our frontliner service providers or frontline agencies like SSS, GSIS, PIR? Available na po ba yan?
I think yes. The GSIS and SSS, if I'm not mistaken, have that.
Ang malungkot kasi, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, last year, I proposed to augment the budget of the DICT for the same program. Ang naiwan lang, of course, na-approve din ng good chairman, parang nagkaroon ng 2.8 billion out of the so much that we were proposing to augment. Yung 2.8 billion, ang naiwan na lang 100 million na FLR pa.
Last year for this year, ho?
For this year.
For this year.
Yun ang malungkot. So, mamaya, we will tackle the issue on FLR, ano? And I'm glad that Secretary Abisado is here to listen to our discussion. Ito, si Yusek Mapa mismo, no, mentioned, sabi niya, yung third quarter of economic performance, Yusek Mapa mentioned that e-commerce such as courier and online transactions, ito yung e-commerce is considered as components of the GDP. Now, can you tell us the actual contribution of e-commerce to our economy, in particular to our GDP? Could be substantial, no? Text na si Carl sa inyo.
What is the question, Your Honor? I'm sorry. Was there a question, Mr. President?
Yung actual contribution ng e-commerce to our economy, in particular sa GDP natin.
I read the figure, while we're awaiting the exact figure, Your Honor, I read the figure that it was a bit late, but 2010, we went up to 10%, I think, the participation from a low of 1 or 2%. But in terms of the economy, I think we don't have that here in the committee as of now. We'll ask.
Anyway, we can just wait for that.
We'll
Mr.
ask NEDA for that, Your
President.
Honor.
Yeah. Now, next topic, moving on, national ID. I'm so interested in this because, you know, we passed this after a long time. Finally, 2018, naipasa ito ng batas. Ang daming attempts ito during the past administrations. And it is only under this administration that the national ID system has been enacted into law, or the PLCs. Now, ang tanong lang is, what is the current status of the National Identification System Act?
Please, I don't understand what you're saying.
I think kailangan natin to sa resiliency pillar.
Yeah, Mr. President, I think according to the schedule of NEDA, they're aiming for within 2020. I don't know. This was the information given to the committee during the committee hearings. Is for pre-registration of 9 million members of the population, Filipino, 9 million Filipinos to be pre-registered by the end of 2020, Mr. President.
And hindi po mabibitin ito sa funding because yearly we are appropriating, di ba? We have been appropriating some amounts, say in 2018, 2 billion, 2019, 2.096 billion, sa 2020, 3 billion, and under the proposed 2021 budget, humingi ng 4.1 billion pesos. This is one endeavor that we should pursue and support. And even kung kailangan i-accelerate, we can add more funding for this because this is a landmark program para hindi tayo mapag-iwanan kasi parang tayo na lang yata walang national ID.
Sean, may we know ano nangyari from 2018? What happened to the 2 billion? And the 2 billion in 2019 and 3 billion in 2020. Na pagdating nung March, we were looking for it because of the SAP, Social Amelioration Program, easy distribution if there was a national ID system.
And Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, nabiktiban ba ito ng FLR? Hindi naman. Huwag naman sana. Na FLR ba ito?
Hindi daw ho.
Ay, maraming salamat naman.
We were
Perhaps
asking for an accomplishment report,
Yes, please,
Mr.
yes.
President.
That'll be good.
yeah.
Thank you.
They were giving me figures as to how much was obligated, but I think what the presiding officers after is really knowing in layman's terms what do we have to show for all these expenditures, Your Honor.
Correct.
Now, next topic, Mr. President, and I hope this will be my last topic, yung for later release. I'm taking issue because, nag-research po kami nung pinagmulan nitong for later release. Ito yung tinatawag na negative list. Nagsimula ito 2014 dahil merong in-issue circular number 551. Napaka-specific ng mga kasama rito. No? And this is repeated under the current year GAA, 2020 GAA, Section 3, under the general provisions. Ang sinasabi rito, Section 3, the GAA as the allotment order. The GAA, upon its effectivity, shall be considered the allotment authorizing agencies to obligate in accordance with its provision except for the following. Except for the following. A, appropriations that by virtue of law, general or special provisions, and rules and regulations have conditions or requirements before release. Fine, no question. B, lump sum appropriations in the agency budget and special purpose funds that have no details necessary for release. Fine, no question. C, those requiring a special budget under the general and special provisions in this act. Fine, no problem. Wala naman sinasabi ritong EFLR yung congressional initiative, Mr. President. But wala na akong slides niyan, pero pinakita ko ito during the committee hearing. 135 billion pesos in congressional initiative inira ng FLR. In
Yes, Your
effect,
Honor.
violating Section 3 of the general provisions of the General Appropriations Act of 2020. Now, okay, kung individual insertions, I can understand. But there are institutional amendments na tinarget pa rin for FLR. And I'll show you some of those institutional amendments, mostly coming from the senators. Last Mile Schools Program. Hiningi ito ng DepEd. Hindi ito, ako yung nakapag-augment dito, no? Hindi ito yung sarili ko initiative. This was requested by DepEd. Why? Because during the budget call, hiningi nila ito. Kulang. Taga sa FLR, entire amount. School-based feeding program. Ito yung, I think Senator Poe was the one who introduced this amendment. And I also introduced a similar amendment. Taga sa FLR, 602 million. School feeding, i-FLR mo. Ano ba masama sa school feeding? Quick Response Fund, 107.5 million. FLR. Next slide. Ito, pati yung LCAP. Si Presidente po ang chairman ng National Task Force, LCAP, NTF, LCAP. Pati ba naman yan, no? Na FLR. Next slide. Ito, katakot-takot. These are all institutional amendments sa DICT. Kung pinondohan natin ito, hindi inalis, at pinondohan natin for 2020, baka next year mayroon tayong national broadband. Nagsisimula na tayo mag-save kasi yung first year, I think their estimate is a saving of around 728 million pesos for the first year. Tapos mag-grow yan, 5.4 million, 5.4 billion, and so forth and so on. Hanggang aabot yan ng 5 years, 34 billion pesos. Bakit yung importanteng programa, kukunti na nga yung inaiwanan, ayan, 2.4, 2.8 ba yan? Yeah, 2.87 billion, yan ang naiwan kasi for so many programs under the OSEC. Yan, tag as FLR. Next slide. DOST. Hiningi ito ng DOST kasi kailangan nila sa research, yan, niche center, in the regions for R&D. Tapos OSEC, Collaborative Research and Development to Leverage Philippine Economic Cradle. Space. Kasi nagpasa tayo ng batas, di ba yung
Philippine Space Act.
Philippine Space Act. Ang nadali ng FLR, magkano yun? 300 million.
Innovation Fund din po, Mr.
Yeah,
President.
hindi na nahabag.
Yung Innovation Fund under the Innovation Act also was covered also, Your Honor.
Next slide, meron pa ba? Wala na.
Pero
Anyway,
marami pa hong hindi nabanggit na.
Yeah, maraming
the committee
binabanggit.
made
Kasi
many,
these are just samples.
yes, yes, Your Honor. The point is well taken.
Yeah. Palang national ID na FLR din, 2 billion pesos. So, we don't know our priorities, Mr. President. No? Ang suggestion ko sana, okay, dali natin sa unused appropriations. Sana man lang yung DBM, nagtanong sa mga agencies, ano ba sa tingin nyo yung mga projects na hindi nyo kayang ma-implement? I-FLR natin yan kasi hindi nyo rin makaya implement within the year. Di ba mas sound yung ganong act or move? Instead of indiscriminately, basta't nakitang congressional initiative, FLR. Regardless kung individual insertions or institutional amendments. Ang maraming tinamaan sa institutional amendments, senators. Because most of our amendments here, I know that for a fact, kasi tinitake up natin sa caucus, are institutional amendments. So ano yung na-hamper? Di yung operation din ng national government, which mostly executive department. So I would just like to reiterate, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, na, and I hope this will be retained because may mga exceptions dito sa FLR. Wala naman nakasulat ditong congressional initiative. So I just hope that this will not be amended because for all we know, baka magkaroon ng letter D dito na congressional initiative. And it's on you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. No. We pledge in the committee we will preserve that provision cited by the good gentleman, and we will assert the prerogatives of the legislature.
Because the original intent way back in 2014 is really yung as enumerated lang. Hindi kasama yung, kasi you know, if natag as FLR yung amendments ng Congress, that is, you know, effectively encroaching on the power of the purse.
Yes.
Parang it is a second wave of veto. And sa Constitution, ang pwede lang mag-line item veto, Presidente. Pero after the President has exercised his veto power, line item veto power on the budget measure, here comes another wave. Yung amendments na inintroduce ng mga legislators, parang nabito. So ba't pa tayo nag-uusap dito kung aasahan pala natin itong pag-uusapan natin, bagsak niyan, FLR, which is as good as a veto. Because I remember when, I think this was in 2017, when we had this reconciliation meeting between the House members and the Senate in the office of the Senate President, where Congressman Zamora was heading the team. And then OIC Janet Abuel was around. Ang sabi niya, hindi po pwede yung conditional veto. Kasi ang inaalaw lang yung veto or no veto. Pero to go around, kasi dati meron tinatawag na impoundment. And then we complained. I don't think you were here already at the time. Kinomplain namin ni na Senator Drilon na wag namang i-impound. So nawala yung impoundment. Pero pinalitan ng nomenclature. Parang dumaan pa yan sa needing clearance. And then now, FLR. So we'd like to appeal to the DBCC, particularly sa DBM. Kung pwedeng igalang naman yung power or yung authority ng Congress over the budget. Kasi there are 4 phases or stages sa budget process. Nasa inyo yung preparation, nasa amin yung authorization phase, babalik sa inyo yung implementation, and then accountability. So baka naman pwedeng marespeto yung authorization phase or stage because that's ours. And whatever amendments we introduce and approve after the BICAM and finally approved by the President by not vetoing it, baka pwedeng wag nang i-veto sa second wave. It's just a request, Mr. President.
Yes, I share your concerns, Mr. President, because somewhat indiscriminate po yung pag-include ng some items doon. No? Sana nakonsulta rin tayo. But I just like to put on record the answer of the DBM. The reason for FLR is consistent with the President's affirmation message to ensure implementation, readiness, and alignment with the program priorities of the government. Since these are new items in the NEP, the same are subject to applicable rules during the budget. Without the pandemic, these FLR items will be released upon compliance with documentary requirements provided under NBC or National Budget Circular 580, adoption of economy measures in the government due to the emergency health situation. That is the official
Mr.
answer.
Chairman, kailan ba tayo nasimulang tamaan ng pandemic? I think February, no?
February,
February or
around
March.
February, March, Your Honor.
Yung circular 578, nandun na yung FLR, January yun eh. So they cannot cite as a reason yung pandemic kasi wala pang pandemic, may FLR na. January na labas yung circular 578 before 580. Yung 580, it came after the pandemic hit us. Pero yung 578, the first time the FLR was mentioned, January 2 linabas. So hindi naman siguro na-anticipate na magkaka-COVID-19 sa Pilipinas, Mr. President.
I think you're correct, Your Honor, that there was already an FLR before the
I remember
pandemic.
our colleagues, di ba? We were in the lounge.
Yes, Your Honor. Yeah.
I could hear, I won't mention names anymore, but some of our
Yes.
colleagues were, very loud in saying, wag naman nilang i-FLR.
Correct.
I heard the laugh. I think she's one of those. Ayun.
That's a
Thank you.
distinctive laugh, Your
Happy
Honor.
birthday, Senator Amy.
Thank you.
Last item. Last item, Mr.
Happy
President.
birthday, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to our Vice Chair, Senator Amy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nobody
You may-
believes
you may-
you're 65 years old tomorrow.
You may proceed with the last item, Senator Lacson. It's past 12:30. We were supposed to.
Okay, last
end at
item, very
12:30.
quickly, Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead.
This just to point out the disparity in the distribution of the budget, yung appropriations. Sa House ito,
Regional, yeah.
nung natapos na yung gap, tinransmit sa atin, one urban district in Davao is being appropriated 15.351 billion pesos. One district in Albay, 7.5 billion pesos. One district in Benguet, 7.9 billion pesos. One district in Abra, 3.75 billion pesos. Yun ang honor roll, Mr. President.
So-
horror roll.
With that list, why are we thinking of amending LCAP?
Tapos, Mr. President, may nakita kami mga districts, 82 million. May 42 million pa yata. Now, I just want to point that out. Bakit ganun ang disparity? What's in those districts that would merit, not to mention absorptive capacity? Kasi kung sa isang engineering district yung babagsak, I cannot see how that particular engineering district could implement 15.351 billion pesos of infrastructure project. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank
All
you. Thank you, Your Honor, Senator Lacson. Maybe we can explore that further in the budget of the Public Works Department.
Oh, yes, and
Okay.
perhaps
Yeah.
we will be able to fully discuss it during the period of amendments.
Yes, Your
All
Honor.
right.
Yes, Mr. President.
Majority Leader, it's 12:38. We would like
Yes,
to give
Mr. President.
uh,